Good people, remember when Thermaltake got roasted for copying everyone else? The ThermalFAKE years? That was 10 years ago. Like the suppressor F51 looked way too close to Fractal design case. People pulled up how some of their other products looked familiar to what already existed on the market. And Case Labs, that was the biggest scandal. They called them out for basically plagiarizing after then apologizing and retracting their statement, but the damage was done. It seemed like for years, Thermaltake was chasing trends instead of creating them. Fast forward to now, it seems like Thermaltake is releasing some of the most fun-looking cases on the market with a priority on user experience that you can actually feel. This is kind of like their redemption arc nobody saw coming, where they're finally building their own identity that is fun, user-friendly, and affordable. Like instead of constantly chasing RGB, which of course they still have a massive collection of products with it, they're shifting towards fun-looking exterior and interior on cases. I mean, no one is doing color like Thermaltake. Of course, they still have their boring black boxes, but also let's be real, there have been stumbles along the way since 2015, like the swap fans, which are magnetic, daisy-chained. In theory, the concept sounds good and like there's been plenty of other competition on the market, but the implementation of the swap fan has been nothing but a disaster.
RGB on, one fan working, two fans not. Let's see if we can get this working. Just give it a hit. Can't even.
Like the mechanical aspect of the pins and how they attached meant constant connectivity issues, and the software was even worse. Of course, they had to dump on the dual chamber category as well. Like the View 380 looks very similar to what already exists on the market. The View 380 XL now got inspired by the angled side ventilation intake, which of course is better for airflow, but we've seen that from NZXT and APNX. So Thermaltake has got one too. And that is not to say that other case brands don't get inspired and implement features that are similar to everything else that's kind of hot and in competition right now, but just Thermaltake has that track record, you know? By the way, this video is not in any way sponsored by Thermaltake, just an FYI. But let's take their new View 600 enclosure. There's the Future Dusk with this gorgeous purple, the Salted Caramel with this bright yellow with a brownish interior, or Mint Strawberry with this teal exterior and a pink frame inside. This is Thermaltake flexing personality while everyone else is kind of stuck on the black and white, except for height. They are one of the few brands that are also trying to be bold with their color options, and the new X50 looking gorgeous. Review on that soon. Now, on the one hand, you could argue these are kind of immature and color matching for your hardware might be difficult because like what hardware you might put against the pink on the Mint Strawberry, for example, but it also opens up opportunities for RGB color implementations of like color matching the fan RGB or some other illumination to the case frame interior or exterior. But also, like I've seen what people post on IG for their gaming setups, and it's just like a color explosion. So Thermaltake is not that crazy of trying to go the fun color route. They've also shown they can do muted colors right, like their TR100 color options are perfectly suited for an ITX enclosure that can be integrated into your gaming setup or fit perfectly in the living room. Plus the contrasting tones between the frame and the exterior panels is just lovely. I think they fixed that blindingly bright activity LED, which was literally my only complaint about the TR100. I had a surprisingly decent experience with the Tower 300, which is Thermaltake's micro TX enclosure, following that whole vending machine look. The case still definitely has space optimization challenges because it's very difficult to access the top I/O. And for micro TX enclosure, people would say this is a gigantic case, but all the colorway options are still available and are growing. While the bigger Tower 600 is definitely not my type of enclosure. It sure can fit large graphics cards and a 420mm radiator on the side, but space optimizations are a huge challenge, and accessing the top I/O for the motherboard is going to be a big pain again. I think this highlights that Thermaltake is listening and is actually fixing what was annoying builders, with integrations of proper toolless side panels, GPU support brackets that actually work, and modularity in all the right places. It was like somebody on the inside finally said, let's make cases that are fun to build in. Like my most recent experience with a TR100, which is that compact ITX chassis without the usual small form factor pain. I love the color options, the build quality, the hardware support is great, and the user experience in general is very close to 10 out of 10. And many of you seem to agree this is a pleasant surprise coming from Thermaltake. But the most interesting thing is that all the things that made the TR100 great scaled perfectly up to a full tower which is why we have the View 600. Everything about the disassembly, the panel fitment, room for cooling if you're into 140mm fans or 420mm radiators, beautifully routed I/O cables, performance dust filters everywhere, locking screws for side panels if necessary for shipping, screen integrations at the bottom if you so desire, quick access from the front if you need to reach for something. The side and top fan brackets are interchangeable with vibration dampening, and you can even go vertical with your GPU by rotating that rear PCIe bracket mount. And also we have a built-in VGA holder. This is a full tower that feels like it was built by someone who builds computers on a daily basis, not just markets them. The price though is a little bit steep at $189, considering the case does not come with any fans. Surprisingly, it is only single boxed for shipping, and given such a large enclosure, I was shocked to see that, but I did get delivered 5 cases, all without damage. And because I have 5 cases, I was able to test out to see what the quality consistency is like across all 5 cases. First, let's start with some small inconsistencies where the thumb screws for the top panel, for example, in some cases were perfectly fine to use by hand, but on others, it was completely tight, required a screwdriver. On all 5 cases, I'm not a fan of this push pin mechanism, just because in all 3 cases that I've actually worked on, I'm having a little trouble getting them seated properly sometimes. Like I have to almost bend the frame. And on one of the cases, the plastic clip broke. Good thing we have replacements. And you should definitely replace broken clips because on this bottom panel on my yellow copy in particular, the push pins are so unaligned that we have already chipped off some of that paint. I appreciate the easy access from the front panel, but you can easily open this by pressing way below the middle. Pretty much on all of them. This particular support beam on the frame level is quite thin, can be easily flexed in and out. On my salted caramel sample, you can see this frame here is completely bent inwards towards our side fan bracket. It doesn't affect the functionality of the bracket, it can still enter, but this just shows how thin these pieces of metal are. All the dust filters and the I/O cables are white on the mint strawberry, and here at the top you can see the frame of that dust filter, which is not very pretty. In general, the build quality is fine. I don't mind that we have a little bit of flexing happening, especially with this very large perforation pattern. I would call this totally acceptable. What I don't find acceptable is just how restrictive these fan brackets are. Look, we're mounting 120mm fans, and look at how much of that fan is blocked by the actual bracket. Imagine you're mounting 140mm fans. I mean, you're blocking even more. So Thermaltake, this is not a good open design. I get that you have to put in some structural rigidity and support in this bracket, but I find that the TR100 brackets were way more open. I also find the overall design consistency to be slightly lacking with the View 600, just because the ventilation pattern on the frame level is square, but on all the exterior panels we have the rounded rectangles. At least all the color matching of our front plastic pieces to the metal that is behind it is pretty spot on. To me, the View 600 and the TR100 show 2 sides of the same coin. One's a playground for enthusiasts, the other one is proof that small can still feel quite premium. But I would love to know what you think. Did Thermaltake really redeem themselves over the years, or is this just a pastel marketing trick that is somehow working on me? But let me know in the comments below. I'm Dmitry. I'll talk to you in the next video.